radio station. You're listening to the Body Talk radio program. It's a wet, dreary, cold day here. We have in the studio as our first guest, Ms. Sharina Mills, a noted author, and she's actively involved in the Cleveland city scene. We also have today working with us one of the best producers in the city of Cleveland, Miss Maria. You're listening to Body Talk. It's a program for your mind, body, and soul. We will have the news and topics that will have you thinking. To join the Body Talk discussion, please call 216-939-5087, or you can email your comments or questions to bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. To my right, I have one of my most favorite people in the city of Cleveland. I hope you can see her two books that she's written on the desk here. I would like for the audience to welcome Ms. Sharina Mills. Ms. Mills, let's just get started right away. Share with the audience what events encouraged you to write your two books.
Well, first of all, I will say that dealing with sexual abuse, what I went through childhood sexual abuse over the years, it really encouraged me to write a book to educate people what sexual abuse is and how it affects you throughout your life. So that's what really prompted me to do it.
Okay, now, I noticed you have two books. Which one came first?
So Bruised but Not Broken, part one, came first, and that talks about from the beginning of the sexual abuse and kind of like went through all of the different areas I went through. Book two actually brings you more current as to what I'm doing now as far as, how I dropped out of high school and went back and earned my degree all the way up to a master's degree.
Oh, now, where did you attend high school?
I attended John Adams High School here in Cleveland, Ohio.
So you're, if I remember, those are the Running Rebels.
The Running Rebels.
So, are you part of that community?
So I grew up in Ward 2 on 139th. I attended Charles Dickens, Alexander Hamilton, John Adams. So yes, I did grow up in that area.
Okay. Now, you said you have a master's degree. Where'd you get your undergrad?
All my degrees are in criminal justice.
Criminal justice?
Yes.
From what school?
University of Phoenix.
University of Phoenix?
Yes, I rise.
Okay, very good. So, did you major in anything specifically or concentrate?
I know the concentration was just totally criminal justice. So I started off after I earned my high school diploma. After I went back to school, earned my high school diploma, I ended up getting a career diploma as a private investigator,
Okay.
which led me into the criminal justice world. And then I got the associates, the bachelor's, and the master's. And no, I'm not going back for PhD now.
You should. You should. If you can, and you don't have to mention the agency you're employed by, what do you do on a daily basis?
So I do work with offenders on a daily basis, and to protect their privacy, we'll just say that I do community work with them to help them perform at a daily rate outside of the walls to prevent them from going back inside the walls. So that's educating them on basic life skill things.
So you can help them obtain employment,
Yes, sir.
driver's license, and all those other necessary documents.
Exactly. Anything that they need to perform a daily life.
And I'm not going to hold you to an exact percentage.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of your offenders, or the former offenders,
Mm-hmm.
are they predominantly black, Hispanic, white? Is it equal distribution, 33.3%?
I would say on my caseload currently, predominantly African Americans,
Predominantly all men, majority men,
50-50.
50-50?
Mhm.
Okay. So, see, I think that's something that the community at large
Mm-hmm.
doesn't understand.
Exactly.
There are women offenders,
This.
okay?
Mhm.
And are these offenders first-degree felonies or second-degree or?
In some cases, it just depends. Yeah, in some cases, I would say I have more second offenders than first offenders.
Okay. Well, let's go back to your book. And again, if you want to answer, because I know this could be a touchy subject. Okay? Now, how did you overcome the sexual abuse piece here?
So really, I won't even say that I overcame anything. I just say I'm still going through it. I still stay in counseling. I have a strong relationship with God. I make sure I maintain my spiritual life. I depend on my counselors to help me through what I'm going through. I still struggle with depression. Depression is real. Um, I am glad to say I'm no longer on an antidepressant. I was on one for like 20 years. I was suicidal, just so it's an ongoing battle. It requires a lot of strength, a lot of encouraging, but it's ongoing.
I met. He's probably one of the most upbeat individuals I've had an opportunity to know. And when you initially informed me of what your life story was, I'm impressed
Mhm.
because you have this very, very positive attitude.
Mhm.
Now, who actually, and and again, I want to protect your confidentiality of other people.
Mhm.
You're married to this guy,
Mhm.
okay? And he's the antithesis of her. He's very positive too, but he anchors her, all right? Tell, if you want to, share with the audience how he's helped you.
Ooh, that's a book within itself. So my husband's name is Troy Miller. Um, he has really helped me a lot. So going back to the sexual abuse started as early as age 6. When I met Troy, I was about 13. And at the time, I was living on 139th in Union. He was living on 93rd in Kinsman. And then we moved over to Signet. And I can remember, by this time, I'm probably about 16 years old. I can remember after my mom's live-in boyfriend would sexually abuse me, I was told plenty of times to get out, you know. I would run away. I would walk 123rd in Kinsman up to Kinsman, catch the 14 down to 93rd. Troy would meet me and he would hide me out in his home, make sure I had food and, you know, whatever. He has played a major role into helping me overcome. I still struggle with the, oh, I'm scared. I hate being dark skinned because, yeah, I got talked about as being dark skinned. He gives me balance with that. He lets me know that it's okay and you can do this. So he actually encouraged me to write the book and to get the story out there. So let me go back to the book for a second. The book was not intended to bring embarrassment to my mother. Although my mother allowed it to happen, she would sit and watch it happen. It's not to bring embarrassment to her, but it's to say, mothers, watch your children. Listen to your children. And it's to say to survivors, you can't overcome it. I'm not going to sit here and play the blame game and blame my mother because playing the blame game wouldn't have got me anywhere.
Right.
So I had to understand that I can do this. So when I got my associate's degree, Troy said to me, I told him myself, well, this is it. I'm done, you know, because I wasn't expecting to make it that far. And he said to me, if you don't go further and earn your master's, you're going to fail me and you. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, because it's like dropping out of high school again, the second time. That was it. I went for it, so I never took a break. Started in 2014, ended in 2018. I didn't take a break.
Well, I'm going to make a comment about Troy.
Mm-hmm.
Every black man who's listening to this program,
Mm-hmm.
who either has a sister,
Mm-hmm.
a cousin, or even a mother who's been sexually abused, emulate, if you do half of what Troy did for you, that's an outstanding brother.
Exactly.
And when I see the both of you together, I can tell the both of you are together. And I'm saying that seriously.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Well, or jelly and peanut butter, which you want to eat first. So the book. Was your abuser ever arrested?
Oh no, because my mother covered for him. Special shout out to Cleveland 4th District back in the 90s. The time that I was picked up and, they kind of looked after me and took me down to 93rd to Troy's house. No, he was never arrested. He did serve time in and out of jail because he was just a person that was a criminal-minded person. And it happened to me with multiple different people, but no one was ever arrested.
You're listening to the Body Talk radio program on the No Static Network. If you have any questions or you'd like to contribute to the conversation, you can call area code 216-939-5087, or you can email your comments and or questions to bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. Our first guest is Miss Sharina Mills. I always call her Miss Mills when I see her because I have high regard and respect for her. So he wasn't arrested. Now, throughout your journey here, do you help other young ladies or women?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And how do you go about that?
Well, the first thing is, I will say this, I wasn't a social media person before the books. And I remember someone saying to me that you're gonna have to get into social media because your readers are gonna want to know you. That was true. So I have a lot of people that I don't per se know that, reach out to me for help. Like counseling, I let them know I'm not a counselor, so I'm being a disservice to you, but I can refer you to counselors or whatever. I kind of help them with like little beauty tips. I run across a lot of women that say they are self-conscious about being dark skinned too, so I kind of like let them know things that they could do to kind of overcome it. Also, I encourage people to go back to school. A lot of people who have been sexually abused that I deal with are high school dropouts and they want to further their education. So I kind of help them with that. I am their biggest cheerleader. I'm at the graduations. I'm their big cheerleader. So that's basically, what I do to kind of like help them.
Now, and I don't know if, let's somewhat roll this into domestic violence, okay? And when I talk to some of the women who actually work in the DV arena, they say the most important thing is some women can't escape or leave because of financial issues or whatever, more so economically. And they say they recommend to them to put together an escape plan. And what is that escape plan?
So for me, my escape plan, because once again, raised in the church, so all I knew, my escape plan was to get married. And I hate to admit it, but education was on the back burner because I was thinking about I needed to survive. I am an only child. I didn't have a support system. It was hard. So it was just, okay, I am going to work. So I was able to land decent jobs, but it was always that fear of, I lied on my application. I said I had that high school diploma because, back then they weren't really hiring you without that. But it was always that fear of, what if this person, we get a new HR person and they want to look at the records and see you don't have that diploma. So I made it through, but obviously, of course, I eventually went back and got the diploma, and that was part of my escape plan. Having a plan, setting goals, and executing the plan that's the most important thing.
Again, we're far from finished with the interview. Share the title of your books with the audience.
So it is Bruised But Not Broken, which is part 1, and then there's Bruised But Not Broken, which is part 2.
Okay. Where can I buy the book?
They are listed, both of them, the books are listed on Amazon.
Amazon, okay. And are you available to go out and speak to different groups? Do you speak to young girls? Do you speak to, just not young girls, to women, period?
People. Yes, I do. Actually, I did the commencement 2021 for CMSD, School of Wine. So I like to speak to young people, young adults that are dealing with it, that are still living in the home, or young teenagers, I should say. They still have to follow mom and dad rules. That is very stressful. That would drive you to suicide because you don't have anyone to take care of you, so you gotta live here and you have to deal with that. And I feel like sexual abuse now today is more common. It's just out there. So I am available to help people, and it's just not. I have a lot of men reach out to me to say, "Hey, we went through it."
Do you, and again, I'm basing this on the question based on your experience, your personal
Mhm.
experience, and somewhat your professional experience.
Mhm.
Men who sexually or physically abuse, is that something that just pops up at age 17, 27? Or is there an indicator at age 9, 10, 4?
For what I see, yes, and I'm going to talk roundabout. I can look at a male offender and I can tell. There's certain signs. Sometimes I let them know, hey, I am a survivor, because then that opens that door. It's harder for a man to tell you they've been through this than it is for a woman. So once I open that door up and they'll go into the story or whatever, that is like a big thing for a man to be able to open up. And I want to say to the men, it's okay to say that you went through it, because it wasn't their fault. It wasn't our fault that we went through it, but the key is to get the help that you need. Because if you don't get the help that you need, the saying hurt people is true. You're carrying this hurt, you got to get help.
So are we to assume that a person, not everybody,
Mhm.
an individual who is physically or sexually abused,
Mhm.
if they don't get the help, they're more likely to abuse as
Yes.
they go through life?
Yes, and they're more than likely to get attached to drugs, alcohol, different things to, I call it, numb the pain, because that's all it's doing. It's going to numb the pain. I escaped that. Never been hooked on drugs, alcohol, never been to prison. That doesn't make me perfect, but it made me had to deal with the problem head on. I didn't have anything to blindside me. It's like, it's a problem. I have to deal with it, which leads me into, I've been in counseling all my life. I started out at counseling at Murder Sage Taylor back in the 70s.
The Mercedes Taylor on Kinsman?
Yes.
Okay.
So I started out there. So, through the years, I just continued to go through the therapy, because I understood that's what I needed. So you have to know what's best for you, and you have to learn to detach from people who say, "Oh, girl, you should be over that by now."
Well, I'm always going to ask the question this way if I don't. From your personal and professional experiences, and I'm going to isolate this to the Black community,
Mm-hmm.
are there enough successful Black counselors out here who I can talk to? I want somebody who looks like me, or does it really make a difference?
For me, it did not make a difference. Earlier on, I felt like I needed a female, because I felt like a female would understand me more than a male. Going through life, being 52 years old now, I connect with who connect with me. That energy is important. As far as African American counselors, yes, they are out here. I can't say that I had more success with one or the other, because I didn't look at color. I looked at your energy, and if I could vibe with you, then you were the person.
Well, let's take a quantum leap here.
Mhm.
A man who physically abuses, either assaults, sexually abuses,
Mhm.
and his act or crime
Mhm.
is covered up.
Mhm.
The individuals who do that, they're enablers.
Mhm. Absolutely.
All right. So that person more than likely is going to continue to do that because he's been emboldened based upon his actions.
I totally agree.
So where do we go? I'm just going to, I'm going to isolate it here.
Mm-hmm.
Cut the pot.
Mm-hmm.
As a Black community, where do we go to stop this enabling? How do we end that?
So I think it starts with the enabler has to understand that this is going to be a cycle. So let's start with this. When I attended the University of Phoenix, I had a professor, I think it was my psychology class. He said that there is no treatment for a person that sexually abuses. That's who they are. Now, if we believe in a higher power, we know that there is a God and God can deliver. Yes, yes, yes. But I'm kind of with that professor that said that, because I know the people that did this to me, it kept going. So where do we go? We have to first open our eyes and realize what this person is doing is not right. If we don't stand for something, we'll fall for anything, and I think we're falling. We have fallen. So we have to understand we have to stop that at some point.
So with that falling,
Mm-hmm.
all right, let's just say we're in the basement right
Mhm.
now. We got to get back up to the third floor, fifth
Mhm.
floor.
Mhm.
Are we saying there's an absence of values in the black community? So where's that value system get reintegrated back into the black community, inclusive of the church? I'm not gonna take that away. Oh, well, we'll ask you about that in a minute. Should that be taught in school? And I'm not talking about Jesus Christ
Mhm.
issues, okay, or topics. Should values be taught in school?
It starts at home.
Granted.
So I think what's happening right now, I see a lot of we parents expects the school to do it all. They can't. You have to plant the seed inside of the home, and then yes, we need the teacher to be on the same page with the parents. But I think right now what I'm seeing, we have more parents that refuse to be parents. So if you refuse to be a parent, to your child, that's the problem with the juvenile system.
So so are you saying? I'll say we, because I'm here with you. Are we saying that parents want to be friends
Absolutely.
versus that parental figure in the home?
Yes. For example, some parents are scared of the children now. So I have two sons that are 30 and 31. I didn't play with them then. I don't play with them now. The respect is gone out of the homes. Let's take the kids that are stealing the cars. At some point, you don't know that your child is out stealing a car. We have social media now. Everything is on social media. So as a parent, if you know that your kid is coming home with a car and they shouldn't have a car, what's wrong with you contacting your local police department? But we would rather enable little Joey or whatever. We would rather enable them to do this and co-sign for them to do this. But then when we have, and I don't want to get into a big debate about law enforcement, we want to get mad when law enforcement do something to our child. But if your child is unruly to you as being the parent, how can they respect law enforcement?
Yes, or anybody.
Well, they're not.
No.
In general, they're not gonna do it.
No.
And you're young enough to remember the 696 kid, which I think, it's a personal opinion here. I think that was one of the craziest things.
It was a
ever done.
joke.
Well, you know, granted, there are abusive parents.
Yes, it is.
Now, I can only speak for myself and my friends. We were never put in the oven, or the dryer, or the washing machine, or locked in a closet.
Right.
So I consider my parents were pretty good. They did not abuse me. I think it was when the county created a 696 kids line, and kids were calling, well, my parents didn't give me a Nintendo, or my parents didn't give me 2 pieces
That
of
was
bologna,
insane.
or whatever.
Yeah.
That somewhat took that authority from the parents to be parents, because now that put the kids in charge. Now, should a child have the right to pick the phone up and call and say, well, my parents are doing this to me? Sure. But they put the kids in charge. And I'm going to mention a gentleman's name. You might know him, might not. He grew up in Cleveland, and he also has a show on this program. And his name is Jeffrey Doggett. And he often speaks of the two-parent family. It has to return to the black community across all cultures, of course. But again, we're being selfish here because it's Black History Year. And I agree with Jeff. But how do you do that? Because we've been such a fragmented culture
We have. So I think, so let's go back to 696 Kids. What did it get us? It got us nowhere. It has children down at Jane Etna building with nowhere to go because I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago when the companies used to come by, the agencies, Belfair, Safi, whoever, trying to get you to become a foster parent. And Troy and I was sitting out on the porch, and when the guy said he was coming for, I said, look up at the address, write that address on your notepad. Don't come back here talking about kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are so out of control. So with having the 696 Kids number, did it really help us?
Well, we're going to circle back to your books here.
Mhm.
See, when you talk about 13-year-old kids
Mhm.
stealing cars, or a 13-year-old young man or woman pointing a gun at you, you don't look at that as a kid anymore.
You're an adult now.
You're an adult. So when somebody points a gun at you, regardless of their age,
Right.
you're an adult.
That's a point.
And and I don't want to say we need to sacrifice anybody. We need to find a way to bring our families back together. And again, it's okay, you can be married and get divorced, right?
Mhm.
And you can get remarried
Right.
and you get divorced.
Right.
But see, one of the things I think that's important here is we have to somewhat be dismissive of the Western culture where that society has said, you can make it on your own, darling. You don't need him. Or I'm going to give you X amount of thousands of dollars, which means you're going to make much more than he is.
Right.
So you don't need him. Or the same thing goes for a black man.
Mhm.
Because again, just for a hot minute, if you look at professional sports, especially the NFL,
Mhm.
and I'm happy these young men are making all this crazy money for playing a game.
Mhm. Mhm.
Who are they married to? She don't look like you, and she don't have my brown skin, unless she's out in the sun, but that's neither here nor there. Give the audience again, title of your book.
The title of the book is Bruised But Not Broken, Part 1 by Sharina Fraser Miller, and Bruised But Not Broken, Part 2.
And I can purchase them on Amazon.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you've lived in different parts of the city.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you said you grew up in the quote unquote rebel town,
Yeah.
which is John Adams. And you now reside in what, the Lee Harvard, Lee Miles area?
Ward 1.
Ward 1, all right. Because you're all around the city,
Mm-hmm.
and you're seeing a difference, and I'm gonna use the term. You see the underbelly of the city of Cleveland,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Although they're ex-offenders.
Mhm.
You see the worst of the worst of the worst.
Yes. Yes.
Give me your impression on what you would recommend, 1 or 2 or 3 items,
Mhm.
that would right the ship in Cleveland.
Well, we have to go back to what do you want out of life? That has to be the foundation. Once we go through, first of all, we don't know how to set goals. The goal is, if you ask a youth right now, what do they want to be when they grow up? Most of them are going to say a basketball player, football player, and that's fine and that's good. What else do you want to be? You need to have a plan A, a plan B, and sometimes a plan C. So we have to first sit down with the family. We need to go back to eating dinner at the kitchen table with the family. Mothers, fathers, start cooking. Nobody wants to cook anymore. Everybody wants to go out to eat. Then we need to, let's look at our budget. Do people even do a budget anymore?
What's that?
Right. This is what I'm saying. And I think another thing, a major thing that's important to me, you have these children that are unruly and some aren't unruly, whatever the case may be. When I birthed my children, I remember at Mount Sinai Hospital, I remember the lady coming by with the clipboard talking about Gerber Life Insurance. That's all I can remember doing in signing. GoFundMe is not life insurance. So can we start with that? Let's get the grow up plan. Let's get. I'm not a insurance agent, but let's get the insurance. Let's talk about the budgeting. Let's talk about no, you're not gonna get these Nike tennis shoes this week because we have to pay this or we need to do this. So I think if we could go back to getting on a budget, stop the going out to eat, and let's just sit down. What happened to you? Remember when we used to do puzzles? Everybody's into a video game now.
Yeah,
Well, those,
remember.
and those are great
All
things
types
you
of
mentioned.
puzzles.
See, one of the things that I say when I go out and speak, we are victims of our socialization. Like, you can be a good victim or a bad
Bad
victim.
victim, right?
All right. So, with that in mind, see, part of, I think, besides the foundation of the family, and I do believe that familiar relationship, if you're in the Latin family, starts at home. The other piece that's important here is you have to have some form of education. And I'm not saying everybody needs to go get a master's or even a bachelor's or whatever the case may be.
Right.
If my parents don't know anything, I'm not gonna know anything.
That's true.
And so I'm gonna drop little Al off at kindergarten, and I expect him to be Einstein 12 years later when I pick him up at Kennedy or whatever the case might be. The sad part here is the school system in CMSD is terrible. It's not teaching anything.
That's true.
So Microsoft or whoever is not gonna relocate to Cleveland.
No, it's not gonna happen.
So you mentioned hope and goals.
Yeah, I mean, if you know that your school system is not doing what it needs to do, then it's your job as a parent to get these programs. And why can't the parents go back to school? They have programs so they could do their GED. They have programs where they can get their high school diploma. So at the same time, if you expect your child to graduate and you know you're not graduated.
And that's true. And hold your thought here. You're listening to the Body Talk radio program on No Static Radio. If you have any questions or comments, you can call area code 216-939-5087, or you can email your comments or questions to Body Talk Radio Program at gmail.com. See, when you mentioned hope, and one of the most prolific campaigns ever run on the word hope was by Barack Obama. And your hope and my hope can be different. And it was undefined. I'm not saying he was being duplicitous. From talking to younger folks across the city, they don't have any hope.
No, they don't.
Their goal, and I'm not going to mention the gentleman's name, he broke away from it. He was out with his friends when he was growing up, much younger than you and I. And he said, well, hey, what's y'all's goals? He said, all of them said, I want to die in a blaze of gunfire. And they were being serious. Now, he broke away and went on to something much bigger and better than they did. So how do we give that back? How do we get that back?
So that's where I think, I hate to go here.
No, go there.
I need for our pastors to come out of these pulpits and talk to their congregation and understand what's going on in your congregation. Let's have different seminars to hold. And I understand there always have to be an incentive. Okay, get some food, give them some food. But we have to start somewhere so that we can like we have a person in our community, we won't call his name, who's young, in his 20s. We have to embrace him. He wants to be a part. He wants to do something. So we have to embrace him in hopes that his peers will see what he's trying to do, where he could pull his peers.
That's right.
But it has to start somewhere, and I just feel it has to start within the home. And I need for these pastors, like I said, come out your pulpit.
Well, and I'm going to use a criminal justice term. You just indicted just about every pastor in Cleveland, not on purpose. You journalists, of course.
Right.
And some of them do have outreach programs.
Right.
And what's somewhat sad when you and I were growing up, because we're both 26 now, we went to community-based churches.
That's true. That's true.
Now what you have, people actually they attended this church, they moved out, and they come back. And they somewhat put on blinders driving down whatever street where the church may be located.
Right.
And maybe it can start with the churches. It has to start somewhere.
Somewhere, yeah, it does. I mean, you remember when the church van used to come by and pick the kids up for Sunday school? Does that still exist? I don't know.
Nope.
Well, see, I remember, I'm dating myself, I remember when I was in elementary school,
Mhm.
we were driven to the Cedar Y.
Okay.
Took us, picked us up. They also took us to Fairfax. That's where we learned how to swim.
Okay.
Because there was not swimming pools necessarily
Mhm.
in different communities in and around Cleveland.
Mhm.
And I think part of it, not only the pastors, there's another P word, those so-called politicians who are supposed to be servants, but they actually self-serve.
So why can't they come out of the office and do more in the community that they serve?
I think part of it is they're afraid.
Of people?
Well,
Yep.
yes.
Yes.
I'm going to answer your question directly.
Yep. Speak on it.
They're afraid of the people who they're supposed to be serving.
Give up your seat then.
I'm going to be direct with you.
Mhm.
And I'm going to have you, the show's not over, but I'm going to have you come back and serve on this panel that we're putting together here. I think people have to be very, very careful
Mhm.
of who they vote for
Mhm.
today.
Mhm.
Because they're not paying attention.
But do people still vote?
Well, no, there's
That's another topic though, but go ahead.
well, there's voter apathy,
Mhm.
to answer your question.
Mhm.
I like when my guests interview me. No, that's fine. There's voter apathy,
Mhm.
and what we've reached in this recent study I just read again last night,
Mhm.
the voting age has increased.
Mhm.
Young voters don't vote.
Yeah.
So and I happen to be a 26-year-old senior. They play to the emotion. I can give you a $25 gift card, I can do this, I
Yeah.
can agree to cut your line or whatever. That's not what it's about. The other thing that's sad is democracy encompasses, and we talk about this, I tell everybody on this show, the best interviews are when we're not on the air. Democracy encompasses another D. It's called dissent. You have the right to disagree. You have the right to complain. If you have elected a person who turns his or her back on you or waves their hand or denies return phone calls or emails or smoke signals or whatever you do, he or she needs to go.
I agree.
But people, more so this segment,
Mhm.
black folks are afraid of change.
Well, that's why we're gonna stay where we are.
No, you did not say that. We're stuck. Now, you don't know me that well, and I'm going to continue to say this for a while. There's a 3-man race, and we finished 6. We're not even in the race anymore.
Totally agree.
Can I backtrack real quick on the political leaders in the communities and why they don't step up? You guys stated that for one that they're afraid of the community, afraid of the people in the community. 2, they're there to collect a nice dollar on the people's time and dime in the community. Because otherwise, some people like in Ward 0, they wouldn't have anything and they would never make that much. Provided they had to go get a regular job. So.
And that is true, but we have to remember whatever is on the top is holding the bottom up. So
Absolutely.
eventually you're gonna fall.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's accountability.
Well, see, you're using 2-syllable words. This person in Ward 0 can't even spell and define
Ooh,
accountability.
listen.
So, the guest this morning, and let me apologize to the listeners, we were having a technical issue early on. We have Miss Mills, who is a prolific writer. She has 2 books, Bruised, but not broken, book number 1, and book number 2, or part 2, bruised but not broken, which can also be, both books can be purchased on Amazon. And if you email me or the station at bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com, and you say you purchased the book and you want to drop it off, maybe we can get her to personally sign the book and do whatever her magic is. If you want to have her come out to your church or your organization or your community meeting, have her speak about what she does, and more so focused on sexual abuse and domestic violence. If you want to give your phone number or you have an email address.
Sure, my phone number is 216-799-8072. I am on social media, Sharina Frazier Miller, and we can connect from there. My email address is there, and we can connect from there.
Okay. Ms. Miller, I would like to thank you for being a guest on Body Talk. It was very invigorating and informative. And we're going to take a 360-second break, which means a 5-minute break. And we'll be right back with our second guest this afternoon. Thank you again, Ms. Miller.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
You got it. sleep, cause you to lose focus, feel angry, afraid, or even use drugs or drinking as a way to escape. But we're here to tell you that violence doesn't have to keep hurting, and you can change your life starting now with help from the Trauma Recovery Center. We want you to take control of your life because today can be the day. The Trauma Recovery Center offers real help for real needs in real time. They offer services for food, clothes, safety, emotional support, and a whole lot more. So listen, don't let violence control you. You can break free, and TRC can help. Give them a call at 216-644-5487. They will come to you wherever you are. They offer real help for real needs in real time. They can give you tools to rebuild your life and your health. Call today. They're free, they're 24/7, and they're confidential. So look, if you want out and don't know where to start, call the Trauma Recovery Center. The Trauma Recovery Center will help you take back your life after violence starting today. Call today. Get the help you need today. If you're listening, the number's on the screen. If you're watching, 216-644-5487. The Trauma Recovery Center of Northeast Ohio, also affiliated with the Center for Families and Children. And now, back to Outridges with Body Talk.
Thank you. So this is Body Talk, the radio program that intrigues your mind, body, and soul. We're broadcasting on the No Static Radio Network here in Cleveland, Ohio. And our afternoon guest is a gentleman who is known in and around the city of Cleveland, Cuyahoga County. He's known as a political consultant and strategist. And I brought him on. We're going to have what's called All Politics Cleveland segment this afternoon. We're going to talk about various issues pertaining to politics in Cleveland. So our guest this afternoon is Mr. Andre White. And Andre, first off, share with the audience a little bit about your background, where you're from, how you got involved in politics, etc.
Well, from Detroit, Michigan. I was born in Detroit, Michigan, but I was raised in Cleveland. I'm from the Lee Harvey community. I moved to the Lee Harvey community in 1976. And from 1976, I attended elementary and high school, which was John F. Kennedy, where I graduated in 1984. So a shout out to the John F. Kennedy Eagles.
Eagles,
That's
yeah.
right, Eagles. I'm a retired Army veteran. I was in the Iraqi War, and I started my community service around late 1980s. I started with the Lee Harvey Community Association. I was a board member, then I became a board member of the Harvey Community Service Center, and I just started doing a lot of community organizing, and also did a lot of political campaigns. Three of my most likable and I always like to talk about campaigns was issue 108 was the school issue, and then we did an issue 4, I believe, which was the levy for buildings, and also did the smoking.
The smoking levy.
The arts
and
culture. The arts and culture. And that was a very good one because the arts and culture, we had over 75% of the vote. And that was the most highest vote ever for a issue in the county, 75% of the vote.
Okay, congratulations. Now, just real quick, the arts levy covered what? What does that cover?
The art levy covers arts in the Cuyahoga County. It's a cigarette tax that when you buy cigarettes, the taxes go to providing art, Playhouse Square, Karen Moon, in your festivals in your community, and that's what it really pertains to.
Okay. Now let's drill down for a minute. Let's talk about individual campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's okay, I know you worked on the Frank Jackson campaign.
I worked on 2 of his campaigns.
And what did you do for those campaigns?
I was on the east side. I did his east side coordinating.
Okay. Now what is, for all those novices out here, what does East Side coordinating mean?
East side coordinator means that you coordinate all events on the east side of Cleveland. You talk to all the council people, all the political people, all the community organizing individuals, and you set up meetings and you get your workers out to drop literature and just basically just do the work to getting their candidate's name out on the east side of Cleveland, which covers Ward 1 through 10.
1 through 10. You're listening to the Body Talk radio program on the No Static Network, and for our afternoon guest, we have Mr. Andre White. And this segment is being sponsored by Pinky's Passions. She is a personal chef and caterer. She can be reached at area code 440-829-0311. Again, this segment is being sponsored by Pinky's Passions, and she can be reached at 440-829-0311, one of the best private caterers and chefs in the city of Cleveland. So let's go back. So you worked on the Frank Jackson campaign. So let's put a soft stop there.
Mhm.
If you look at the most recent election, the voter turnout has been terrible.
Yes.
So I'm labeling that as voter apathy. How do we get people to come out to vote? What's the issue here? What's going on with the voters?
Well, the issue is that people don't see why they need to vote because there's nothing getting done when they come out and vote. You have politicians that make promises, but they don't deliver the promises.
Mm-hmm.
So, especially our young people want to see something happening now. You know, don't tell me this and that, and then when you get in, you don't do nothing for me. So that's some of the voting apathy that's
Well,
going on.
again, it's called the C-word study, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
C-word study. And it identifies that the voting demographic across the country has changed.
Yes.
It's predominantly now what we would consider a senior voter.
Mhm.
Young folks don't vote. So if I'm understanding you correctly, if I'm a young voter, I heard what you said, let's say 4 years ago, and you didn't do anything. So you're running again, and I'm not gonna vote.
Right.
All right. How do we, that dynamic, and I've heard the statements, well, you gotta come up with better candidates. If you have candidate A who's made promises and has done nothing, why don't you vote for candidate B?
Mhm. I'm gonna say it's hard to get young folks to come out and vote. I don't know what we can do to get them out, but we can just continue to talk to them and hopefully they will listen and come out and vote. But the bottom line is that they need to see something happening, and they need to see something that's going to affect them happening now. You know, and some of these politicians, elected officials, try to be slick and they want to do marijuana on the ballot or try to expunge their record and everything. And then when they try to do these initiatives, there's always a stumbling stone that stops them. And then here we go back again. Oh, they ain't talking about nothing.
Well, the most recent elected congressman from the New York area,
Mhm.
the guy who most likely lied about his own name.
Right.
All right.
And that's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's a lot going on. And surprisingly, and he's a Republican. Let's label him. He's a
Mhm.
Republican. The voters want to recall him.
Right.
And
And they should recall because he told a lie.
he misled them
He misled them.
to win the
And this
election.
goes back to what we're saying again about voter apathy.
Well, but you have people in office who are known to lie, but they continue to get reelected.
That's because their supporters are there for them. And their supporters are there, they're always going to support them. And then the non-supporters are the ones that stay at home. Those are the ones that we have to reach and say, hey, you guys got to come out and vote, because if you don't come out and vote, we're going to continue to have this individual here. And you're the ones that we need to come out. And you're the ones that can take this individual out. But they stay at home because, once again, they don't see a reason.
Let's take another soft stop here. Let's do a report card.
Mhm.
We're basically 1 year and a month, almost 2 months now, into the Bibb administration.
Mhm.
On a scale of A to F, or 0 to 5, whatever you feel comfortable with, where would you grade his performance?
I'm going to use my report card, and I'm going to use the promises that he had made to us on the southeast side of Cleveland. And that would be an F, because I have not seen any of those, what's the word I'm looking for? Any of those promises that he said he was going to do. And then some people say, well, he's only been there for a year, you got to give him a chance. But I used to work in the private sector, and then when I go to a job, to a new job, they give me 30 days or 90-day probation. And if you don't perform in those 90 days, you're gone.
Well, one of the things that you often hear in politics, and especially at the executive level, more so presidential and governors, the first 100 days, or it's a
Right.
honeymoon period. And for those of you out there, the listeners who've been married, the honeymoon is over as soon as you say I do.
Mhm.
The honeydew list begins that
Right.
day. You have to perform.
Right. And this was all about performing, making your promise. You do your promises on election roll. And when you get elected, you need to make your promises. Now, Bill did make one promise. I'm part of the Clash, which is a Cleveland-led safe advocacy for housing, and we asked for a Kazar for lead. He delivered that.
Okay. What, if you can mention, or if you want to, one or two items that he did not, or has not delivered on?
Well, development in the southeast side of Cleveland and crime.
Okay. Now, I'm gonna say this about, development. I'm not here to, let me back up for a minute.
I'm not talking about no barbershops and hair salons
The comments made today in the
and
political,
chicken wing places
in the political segment of Body
and
Talk
Taco Bell.
are not, should not be construed to those in the thoughts of the station owner. These are strictly personal opinions of the guests and the host. Okay, so when you say and I agree with you, it's not barbershops, hair salons, Charlie's or whatever. And paving streets is not development. What type of development can really occur on the southeast side of Cleveland? The acreage, and I'm not defending him, the acreage is not there. Eden Corporation, just a name, is not gonna relocate on the corner of Harvard Lee Road.
No,
That's right.
Giant Eagle is not gonna open a store on the corner of Glendale and Lee Road. You're not gonna get a Red Steakhouse. I think one of the most important aspects of being the mayor and a council member is you have to have some sense of character and integrity when you do run.
Mhm.
You can't make these highfalutin promises that you know will never be fulfilled.
correct.
You just can't. So, the crime issue, and glad you mentioned that, the most recent budget just was completed or reviewed by city council.
Review, they have not completed it.
They'll do reconciliation, but from my history and research, most of the time the reconciliation is so minor, it's not impactful, okay? The mayor's budget doesn't fund the police department. It cuts it off at a certain level of officers. If I remember the number is 1498. Why they didn't make it 1500, I don't know. But it's 1498. They're losing 23 officers a month just due to retirement and transfers.
Mhm.
So that 1498 number is probably gonna bottom out somewhere maybe in the 1300s. If you can't get a zone car to respond now at the number they currently have, let's just say it's 1500, which is not true, it's actually less than that. How are you gonna be responsive with less than that number? You can't pull it off. And the answer that was given when Biv actually sat at the meeting, the first budget hearing, he said, well, we have technology.
The shot spotters.
Well, ShotSpotter.
Shot spotter, right?
ShotSpotter.
Right.
ShotSpotter, it identifies where a shot was fired. It can also tell you the type of round, depending on the time of day.
But
You
real
can-
quick, a
yeah.
lot of folks don't call when they hear shots because they're so used to hearing shots.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Well, that's true.
That's okay. Can I add in that, the incident that happened today at the corner of Cloverside from yesterday? I
Yeah, I
went to
just
cover
read
it today, and they were fighting over there, and only one car showed up.
Mhm.
So just to add on to what you guys are
Well,
talking
they
about. Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. White.
That's because there's a shortage
Mm-hmm,
of policemen
mm-hmm.
at the 4th District, which has the highest or the most square feet of ground
Absolutely.
on this side of town. So they need more policemen at the 4th District.
Yeah, the 4th District is the largest district in the city of Cleveland,
Mhm.
17 square miles.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming both of you are talking about, for the listeners, the Lee Harvard area, which is considered the upper end or southeast side of Cleveland. If you have a shortage of officers today, but you've reduced the number in the budget, and we'll use ShotSpotter will make the world perfect, people do call. Let's say people do call.
Mhm.
If car number 54 is on a call on 147th and Kinsman, he or she can't respond to the call until they finish that one. If they
Correct.
take another call, another car from, let's just say, out of zone 6, and send them to ShotSpotter, then zone 6 goes without a zone car. And what I find amazing here, they came up with this number, 1498. But now they want to hire a consultant to determine what the right number is.
Well, isn't that the job of the chief of police, the safety director, the HR? What are they doing? If you're gonna hire a consultant, what are these individuals gonna do?
Well, I would think, based upon the tenure of Chief Drummond as a police officer, I think he has 33 years.
He should know how many officers he needs. You don't need to call a consultant to tell me how many
Exactly.
people I need.
Well,
When you got 3 high-paid individuals.
right, and his command staff, and let's just say each one of those deputy chiefs and commanders have a minimum of 25 years. You would think those men and women collectively could come up with that number.
Correct.
You would think. So you're giving, go back to the grade, you've given Mayor Bibb an F based upon what he hasn't delivered so far, all right?
Can I add in something that a lot of people probably don't know about?
Sure.
The city of Cleveland workers are a large part of the group that want to see him gone because he used their money.
I didn't say that, she said that.
I did say that because it hits very close to home for me. You know, my husband's been a city of Cleveland worker for over 15 years.
Okay.
And they worked through that pandemic just like a lot of not doctors and nurses, you know, and people that are required for 24-hour facilities, like they never got time off for that. You know, and so to be rewarded and thanked, like they didn't even get a free lunch or anything, you know, like nothing. And then he took the money and spent their money on who knows what, but to not reward your workers and thank them for working hard and diligently through, you know, a horrible time, you know, for many is unacceptable.
My father was a city worker too.
Okay,
He retired from the city of Cleveland, so
Okay.
I understand where you're coming from.
absolutely.
Well, and thank you, Marie.
Mhm.
One of the things I think that's important for the atypical citizen in the city of Cleveland, they need to grasp a baseline understanding of the revenue flow in the city of Cleveland. Most citizens don't do that. See, one of the things that I've learned over the years, what you don't fund, you don't believe in.
Right.
See, don't tell me you believe in law enforcement, but you're not funding it.
But the bottom line is, this is what I believe it is. It's defunding the police department. That's what I see. We're taking money from them, it's defunding.
True, and
And that was a promise on the campaign.
well, that when he was campaigning, he did. I think one of the things, and I'm not going to change your words. See, when people initially used the term defund the police, it was similar to what happened in Minneapolis, if I
Right.
remember, where they just stripped the entire budget from the police department.
But he's not doing that.
Well, he's not funding it.
He's not funding it, and then he is still putting money on, don't get me wrong, mental health, social workers, and that was part of the big defunding program.
Well, there was a gentleman I had opportunity to do some work with, Marion Berry,
And he said there's three things as the mayor. He said, be sure you have good safety forces that are responsive. That means the police and fire department. Also have good city services, pick the trash up, etc. And he said, be sure you have clean parks.
Right.
If you do those three things, you'll be good.
And not to cut you off, but that's the problem with Mayor Lightfoot right now. Today is the primary. And hopefully she'd make it out, but it doesn't look that good. And one of her problems were the three things that you said. One was safety.
Well, we can take a wild guess. She might make it out. It's gonna be tough for her.
Right.
Not because
We'll
of
see
the
now.
eight candidates. It's just,
They're not happy with her.
they're not happy with her. And the voters are gonna turn out heavy in Chicago. And if she doesn't make it out of the primary, it's gonna be interesting for the so-called other urban city mayors.
Right.
Because if she doesn't make it out, it's gonna be tough for some other people to get reelected across the country.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Body Talk Radio program on the No Static Radio Network. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to call 216-939-5087. Or you can email your questions or comments to bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. So basically an F. Not overall, but just on the two items you mentioned.
Right, just two items I mentioned.
And the one thing, before we move on to the next topic, people need to be aware, the city's also gonna lose 24 EMS technicians.
Yes.
See, don't get focused on one item. They're gonna lose 24. So when you call 911, because the wait time now, response time, is averaging approximately 45 minutes to an hour. So you lose 24 technicians that drive those big green boxes, it's gonna be a little bit longer. Let's move to the city council.
Ooh.
You mentioned that you reside in Ward 1. Okay. First, explain what city council's responsibility is,
To write legislation.
okay, in the city of
The
Cleveland.
city of Cleveland.
And they also have oversight responsibility
Correct. With the budget.
with the budget. But they also have oversight responsibility, not only of the budget, but the operations of the city.
City, correct.
The city council really do that?
There's some members that do, and there's some that don't.
Okay,
I'm gonna say that.
all right, and then I'm not gonna,
As a body, it is what it is.
well, okay. As a body, you're saying they do and they don't. I'm not gonna ask you for specific names. The one, probably the biggest committees, and I'm gonna abbreviate their titles, be finance, safety, ports,
Correct.
and let's say health.
Yeah, definitely health, because you know.
Yeah, have to put that in there because of your class background.
Right.
Okay. If there's oversight being done, why is the performance in those departments not up to par?
Because nobody's holding nobody accountable.
Well, that's the responsibility of city council.
Council, correct.
Okay.
To hold those departments accountable to do their job.
Well, they do that, that's true. But part of that responsibility, when you hold the oversight hearing, and I'm just gonna use the safety department. Well, your response time has been extended out to 2 hours for zone crime. That's made up, of course. City council really can't change that. They have to meet out the problem, ask the chief and the safety director, what are you gonna do to reduce it or protract that response time? And then they have to hold the mayor responsible for that. From my time in Cleveland, I've never seen that done. I've never seen it done.
You never seen city council hold the mayor
Never.
accountable?
Never,
Okay.
never seen it done. I've never, for example, we just gone through the budget cycle. And with all due respect to the previous mayor, it's 16 years. City council technically just gives, waves a magic wand on the budget. I've never seen city council, though the last, let's say, big discussion would have been with Jane Campbell's budget. When she was trying, when she actually did reduce the police, the safety forces. City council doesn't say, well, you're not funding this enough, we recommend to give this one $1 million more, or you're overfunding this department, so we're gonna take that and give it to somebody else. You don't have that in Cleveland.
No, we don't.
Okay, so let's go to Ward 1. And we're gonna just skip around, looking at different, if you know how they are. What would you give the overall grade to the councilman in Ward 1?
Is there a grade to give him? Cause he ain't done nothing.
Well,
Incompetent,
is that a 0? He gets an F?
I give him a 0.
Okay.
Because basically, we haven't seen anything done in that community for the last 4 years he's been there. Only thing I have seen that he has done is around liquor stores, 2 franchises, 2 restaurants. That's basically it.
And just looking across us, the remaining 16, we're not gonna give all of them a grade. Who would you consider the most effective council people?
I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. I just know that my councilman that I have is not making Ward 1 the standard that it used to be.
Okay,
I'm not gonna speak on anybody else's ward.
Caller.
Caller, welcome to the Body Talk Radio program. May I have your name and where you're calling from, please?
Yes, this is Roland calling from University Heights. How are you today?
I'm fine, Roland, and how are you?
Good. Once again, commend you on a great show as usual. Best show on the network, in my opinion. But I wanted to ask your guest a question that he may have addressed already, so if you did, please forgive me for being redundant. But the public school system as it's constituted today, when it comes to African American students and students of color, period, is, in your opinion, is it helpful or is it detrimental to the education? And if detrimental, what improvements do you feel need to be made in order for it to be helpful and not detrimental?
Well, my 2 children go to Cleveland Public Schools. They attend Campus International. And Campus International is a very good school to attend. But everything that's taught at campus is not taught at other elementary schools. So we need to have the same level of playing field among all the schools. Are the schools helping our children? Not really. Not really. And I always say this, if you want to change something in your community, you need to change your educational system and make it better. And that's what we need to do, is to make the education system better. And I'm glad that my children get the education they receiving, but the same education that they're getting from campus is not the same education that the Adlai Stevenson students are getting. We had to pull our kids out of Adlai Stevenson, and I'm not knocking Adlai Stevenson, but we had to pull them out and send them down to campus because there was a much better school, teachers, atmosphere, and it should not be like that. All the schools should have the same.
So, Roland.
So let me ask you this.
Go ahead,
So how
Roland.
much, in your opinion, is the school to blame for that, and how much is the family structure, or in a lot of cases, the lack thereof of a stable family structure? How much is that to blame? Because you just made the point that you had to pull your kids out of Adlai Stevenson because of one of the issues it sounded like you were saying was that due to behavioral problems in the school was not allowing teachers to really do what they're paid to do because they had to deal with behavioral issues. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I misinterpret what
No.
you're saying.
You're right. You're right. And
So-
it plays on both roles. It's the school and the parent. The teacher cannot enforce what's not taught at home. It's the responsibility of the parent to also step in and say, hey, you gotta get your education, you gotta do this. The bottom line is that the school is not a daycare center. When you go to work, you just drop your kids off and they just supposed to go there. You gotta get involved in your children's education. And there's nothing wrong going and checking up on them, seeing what they're doing and going to that school and getting involved in your school. That's the problem, that we don't have parents. I'm not gonna say all parents, but some parents just don't get involved in their school. They just think it's a drop-off zone, and that's not right.
Well, Roland,
And Mr. White is your name, is that correct?
That's correct.
So, Mr. White, I'll ask this one last question and then I'll shut up and listen. If you had to put a percentage on it, what percentage would you say the failure of the school system to educate properly, what percentage would you say is upon the school itself, and what percentage would you say is on the family structure?
Well, once again, I'm gonna say this about that. Each school is different. It depends on what school that you attend. John Hay has a history of sending kids straight to college. They got a good program down there. JFK has a welding program. To me, it depends on what school that you're attending, and it depends on what the parents are doing at those schools. Are they involved? So, and how much is they're getting support from the Cleveland Metropolitan District. So all that plays a role. I just can't say that I'm gonna give the school system a F overall, but there's some schools that are doing well and some schools are not, and that's why I'm saying that we need to look at making all the schools do well.
Roland,
I agree.
you have any other questions, Roland?
No, that's it. Mr. White answered my questions. Thank you once again for the forum. Thank you once again for bringing excellence in broadcasting during this time. Again, I commend you. I think I listen to shows on this station. I think yours is by far the best show on the station. But thank you.
Well, thank you, Roland, for your participation. Just real quick on the CMSD issue. See, when you talk about elementary schools, and I'm assuming Campus International is considered a charter school?
No,
It's not?
no.
Okay.
Campus International is, their partner is Cleveland State University. And it's K through 8th, and then they have a high school, Campus International High School.
I'm a former academic.
Mhm.
And when you talk about curriculum, shouldn't you have common curriculum in elementary schools from kindergarten, let's say, to 6th grade
Mhm.
in every school?
They do that. They do have common curriculums, 1 through
Whatever grade.
whatever grade it is, and they also have support teams there for the children, you know.
And I'm just using the name, I'm not making fun or light of Adlai Stevenson. Is it the discipline issue that made the difference from moving your children from school A to Campus International?
It was the behavior problems that was going on in the school, and I wasn't knocking the teachers, but the teachers just,
Yeah, the first
their
45
hands are tied up.
Yes, the first 45 minutes, sit down, be quiet, don't touch. Okay.
You can't, you know, you can't put 45 kids or 30 kids in a room with just a teacher and their aide and expect them to do, teach.
Well, see, it was another, and we're gonna go back to the political piece here in Cleveland. It's been known, it's stated that Cleveland is the poorest urban city in America.
Mhm.
Okay? And traditionally, poverty-stricken families or children don't learn well.
We can't say all,
No,
because I have a friend, and he went to East Tech, and I did not know that he went to East Tech because he was telling me how much he went to Case West Reserve
Mhm.
for school and got his master's in education. And then when he told me that he went to East Tech, I was like, whoa, not East Tech, I'm sorry, East High. I was like, whoa, you came out of East High, top of his class. So I'm just saying that all kids are not.
no, by all means, I'm not saying that let's just use a number. I'm not saying that all 10,000 children in CMSD aren't going to learn.
Right.
the greater percentage of those children struggle academically.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's been proven across this country statistically. I'm just not picking on Cleveland. I'm just pointing out a fact here. If you live in a poverty-stricken city, there's certain resources that have to be put into the schools to change that dynamic.
And there are resources in those schools, because my son is receiving some resources, but it's not enough resources for all the kids that have learning disabilities or hard for them to learn. So they need that support and those resources.
You're listening to the Body Talk radio program on the No Static Radio Network. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to call area code 216-939-5087. We have Mr. Andre White, a political strategist and consultant in the studio. Who's responsible for CMSD in the city of Cleveland?
Well, the superintendent is the individual, or the CEO, I'm sorry, they don't call him superintendent. The CEO is the one who runs the daily operation, but the responsibility and the policy making is from the board,
Okay.
Cleveland Board of Education. I know what you're gonna say.
No.
And the Board of Education is not an elected board, and it falls on the mayor,
Mhm.
and he should have some type of education initiative, and he has his chief, but the board falls on all those individuals, the mayor, the chief of education, the CEO, and also the board.
Okay. So if education, again, I'm going back to this federal background I have. If education was important or is important, you fund it, you support it.
But federal government don't fund.
No, I'm just using a federal
Okay.
standard. If you believe in having, for lack of better terms, a strong military, you fund a strong military. In other words, you have the salaries or whatever, the planes, the rifles, the tanks for the troops, the airmen, and the ships for the Navy. You can't say you believe in a strong military, but you're taking things away, you're not putting money into it. So one rumor that's been floated around, and more so at the county, is that, and taking nothing away from Chris Rohane, who's the new county executive, there's a lot of people who are disappointed in the county executive model. And some people undercurrent now is maybe to take it back to the three commissioners. Okay? What's your opinion on taking it back? And again, nothing against Chris.
Well, you're not gonna get me beat up, because I gotta go in front of them today, so I'm not gonna take that answer. I gotta go in front of them today.
Well, without mentioning names, and I understand your position that you're in. See, some things just don't work. Now, they might not work because the wrong person was in office. You don't know.
Well, this is our third executive. The first two didn't work, and so hopefully Chris can do some things.
Well, and again, you know Chris better than I do. I'm sure he will give it his best effort on college try. I think the way that the charter was written, because you have this body called county council, and they're somewhat powerless
Right.
in the model.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't make no decisions.
They'll make laws. Remember, you have to go in front
Yeah,
of
I'm
the
sorry.
this afternoon. They make great decisions.
They make good decisions.
Okay. Either you have to reduce the size of county council, or you have to change the charter to give them that authority. And you also, I'm sure you've heard the comments about, well, we need to go, meaning the county, needs to return to an elected sheriff instead of he or she being appointed by the county executive.
I think, well, I don't think, I believe that they need to look at redo the charter. You're correct. And when I say redo the charter, it's to give county council more authority.
Okay.
I believe they need a little more authority than just letting the county exec just run everything, you know.
Well, yeah, as it rests now, or stands, he operates in a fiat position. What he says technically goes. But let's move back to the city of Cleveland. a couple of days ago, actually was the first reading was yesterday in council, where council wants to increase and change how they spend discretionary funds.
I wrote something to the plane down, hopefully they will print it. And I am against giving them more money because they haven't showed us what they're spending the money on already. I would like to see award allocation, you know, I haven't seen in my lifetime a councilman Ward 1 come in front of the citizens or the residents and say, well, this is what I bought. This is what I spend my money on, you know, our discretionary funds on grass cutting, blah, blah, blah. You don't see that. We have a council person who gets casino funds, and he takes that casino funds all the way over to Flamingo, which service Huff, Glenville, St. Clair. They service, Flamingo service that area. So if I want to get some type of service, and I live in the Lee Harvard area, I have to go all the way down to Flamingo to pick up an application for grass cutting or senior services. So, and then we have CDCs in our area that he's not funding.
Well,
That doesn't make sense.
And that should be a question he should stand up there and be willing to present and answer, excuse me. Let's go back to this discretionary funding point. See, one of the things I'm hearing, and I watched the hearing, and I talked to people in the city. The biggest issue the city council has, because they want this additional
To
money.
spend more money
Well,
on
to spend more money, but they're saying.
services.
Well, on services, but they're saying it's taking too long for the administration to cut checks for services. So they wanna use their discretionary funds to do that.
But $99,000 won't take care of a whole ward when you want to do something that the service is supposed to do for you.
Well,
$99,000 is not going to do that. So their responsibility is to get on the administration
to cut the checks, to do the
to
services.
do the services.
That's the point I'm making here. So it goes back to, let's say, 10, 11 minutes ago. Their oversight is poor. Because if vendor Smith hasn't been paid, then they should be on the administration and say, well, what's your disbursement process? I'm against it for a couple reasons. There's no, I shouldn't say no. There's a lack or poor internal controls. What I envision, and I'm going back to my accounting background here, we're gonna have Ken Johnson to the 10th power here.
Right. And they're going to say, and they're going to use that money for leverage. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, it's for politics.
Right, for politics.
You know, I did this. I painted the light poles or whatever, purple or whatever. See, I think that, and we'll get to the money and politics in a minute here. I'm opposed to increasing the level of or the limits on what they can do with their discretionary funds.
I oppose it because they have not come in front of the citizens and already showed what they're doing with their funding, their funds.
All right, so I add that to my list.
Yeah.
So we got 4 things on it. So let's talk about money and politics, and we'll get to issues, HBR 6 in a minute. How do you take the money out of politics?
When you say take money out of politics, as in,
Well, if you're running for office and you have $90 billion, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna win.
it was never supposed to be set up like this. It wasn't supposed to be set up where elected officials owe their allegiance to corporate and money people. The allegiance supposed to have been to the citizens that they represent. Now it has got overboard, and now it's all the way up to Congress, and Congress is the one that make the laws, and they're the ones that get the money. So they're never going to write anything or any legislation on funding or stopping all these corporate business coming in. And you see how it almost destroyed, or it did destroy, our district, our congressional district, with all this money flowing in and coming in and all these, what do you call them?
Tax.
PACs, secret PACs, and putting out all kind of false information. It was terrible.
So it goes back to what we said earlier, talked about earlier. You have apathetic voters,
Mhm.
but the apathy is partially driven by what somebody says they're gonna do, which they know they're never gonna do.
Right.
So voter A, B, and C decides we're never gonna vote again.
Mhm.
But it's the money that's driving those decisions.
Right.
If a person who's running for an office can stand up and make false statements, he or she knows they're gonna win because they have the most money.
If you don't have money, you're not gonna make it. I'm gonna just keep it real in politics. If you're running a campaign and the limit for city council is $30,000, you can't beat $30,000 if you only got $2,000.
So are you saying that's the most a candidate can have in his or her account?
Well, that's what I believe that they want you to sign off on. You know, there's a $30,000 limitation.
And if I recall correctly, the most you can give a candidate running for council, 1,500.
1,500, yeah.
But if you have 6 people living in your house,
They can get it.
they give. Okay. I know it's a far-fetched reality. Wouldn't it just be nice if whoever, the state, federal government said, if you're running for city council in the city of Cleveland, every candidate gets $5,000.
Mhm.
If you wanna spend it all on candy bars or pieces of paper, campaign literature, or media spots, or whatever, that's what you do. You can have less, but you can't have any more than that. That's it. Then you have a level playing field.
This is a level playing field.
Okay.
Right now, it's not a level playing field because an incumbent will get more than an individual who is a candidate, fresh out of nowhere, wants to run, might changes, but he can't make a change because A, he's running against the supporters that he has, and he's running against big money.
Well, the one thing that we'll touch on it really quickly, not that the show's about to end. It seems that in Cuyahoga County, more so on the Democratic side, and maybe on the Republican side, this is the town of incumbency.
Mhm.
You don't have, people don't vote, quote unquote, for the better candidate.
They vote for who's there already.
Right, the incumbent. I call it, you get your September Christmas card
Mhm.
with everybody's picture on it. And it was,
And that card is hard to beat because that's what most Democrats go off of. They look at that card and they say, well, this is who we should vote for, and then that's what they do.
and I'm not, and you're right, I'm not trying to, I don't wanna demean any one particular candidate. There was a recent judicial election on the common pleas side, and he openly admitted that he didn't campaign at all,
Right, and he was elected.
and he was elected.
He was on part of that card.
The card, he wanted the party endorsement, party gave him endorsement, next thing you know, he's a judge. Other thing that I want to just briefly touch on. So we're coming up on some judicial elections here, more so on the community bench. Do you want to do a scorecard? Who's the favorite right now? Who's not the favorite? We have with TJ Dow. I think
Well, you can't right now say who's gonna be a favorite, who's not, because you don't know who's gonna be in the race. Because these candidates have till June, I believe it is, to have their petition signed and everything. So once they get their petition signed and turned in and certified, then you can do your card.
And I think I'm pretty correct on this. To run for the community bench in the city of Cleveland, you only need 50 signatures.
I believe so, don't quote me now.
Yeah, it's 50 signatures, I'm pretty sure. You and I are pretty sure, so we're gonna be right on that. But to run for city council, you need 230.
Correct. At the state, at the state, that comes from the state.
You listen to the the Body Talk radio program on the No Static Radio Network. If you have any questions or comments to make, please call area code 216-939-5087. Since it is Black History Month, do you have a Black history figure? It could be somebody from history, or somebody's current, who's alive, it could be
Well,
anybody.
since we talk about politics, I do have one. Harold Washington,
Okay,
first black mayor of the city of Chicago. Marion Barry. Was he the first black? He was.
well, Mary Mayor was the first elected mayor in the city of Washington.
Carl Stokes. And the reason why I'm naming these individuals, because these individuals were the ones that worked for the people. They knew how to work the system. Oh, I'm sorry, and my good buddy from down in Atlanta, Marion Jackson.
Mayor Jackson, Maynard.
Maynard Jackson, correct. They understood people, they knew how to work the system, and they got things done.
It's interesting you mentioned the mayor. I'm going to mention a gentleman that I had a chance to know and work with, work for, not on a personal level, but more so in this campaign. His name was Nathaniel Glover. Everybody called him Nate. He's the first black elected sheriff in all of Florida. He won the race in Duval County, which is actually the largest county, landmass city, that comes from Jacksonville. And he served 2 4-year terms. He was the only countywide elected Democrat in Duval County. He's a black guy, okay? So what was strange, not was when I say good, more so strange, he had a majority white vote in both elections. He beat white candidates who ran his administration as a sheriff. And because he did such a great job as sheriff, he turned the Duval County Sheriff's Department around. He then ran for mayor. And the same white people who voted for him to be sheriff would vote for him to be mayor. After he lost the first race, he became the president of Edward Waters College in Jacksonville. He did that for 12 years and turned that college around. Also, I think, and I hope everybody can see the book on the table here. It's called Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. Her text preceded the book by Dr. Satcher and Dr. Pam Meads about medical disparities. And it's an excellent book to read if you just want to understand research in the black community and how medical research and how it affects the black community. And the other thing I'm going to say before we wrap up here, and I want to thank Mr. White for being a guest on the radio program on Body Talk. Continue to go out and vote. Just vote. If you don't vote, you don't change things. And I'm going to leave this with everybody. Although we celebrate Black History here every day, all year long, my other Black History heroes for today is everybody, all of you, my brothers and sisters that are making a difference, standing tall against the odds, having families, rearing children, building wealth, establishing a legacy for yourselves and many others. Thank you for listening to Body Talk, and I'll see you next week. That sound good? I'm supposed to win it, please.
Into Body Talk with your host, Al Bridges, here on the station. StaticRadio.net. Make sure you guys check us out on social media where we absolutely love to hear from you on Facebook.com/No Static Radio LLC, on Twitter at No Static_Radio, on Instagram at _No Static Radio, and on YouTube at No Static Radio. We also accept donations to a Cash App at No Static Radio for all shows. Also, if you guys would like to listen to replays of this show and others on NoStaticRadio.net, please make sure you check us out on Mixler or Mixcloud.com. Just type in No Static Radio in the toolbar for replays of this show and others on the platform. And for continuous streaming, that means no refreshing the page, maybe a little rebuffering on their own, and a little commercial, and bam, you got us. Check us out on TuneIn.com, Live Online Radio.net, or MediaQ for continuous streaming of this show and all others on the platform, and for all things No Static Radio, including up-and-coming events, merchandise, and an in-depth look at all our great show hosts here. Please check out our website at www.nostaticradio.net. Thank you so much for tuning in on this fabulous Tuesday afternoon. I want to remind you to stay warm and stay next to us, too, coming up this evening. Today's gospel music show with your host, Reverend Dr. But in the meantime and in between time, you know what it is. We've got more music for your listening pleasure here on your Voice of the Revolution on StaticRadio.net, powered by Google, partnered with Colors, and sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines, the Cleveland Rugby League, and designed exclusively. Thank you for listening. You guys stay close, and we'll be right back.